Hello everyone and welcome to an incredible game that just finished from the Sinquefield Cup, Nepomniachtchi versus Fabiano Caruana. After the rest day, a brilliancy occurs, a beautiful miniature, and what makes it even more interesting is that going into this game, Nepo and Fabi's head-to-head score was 1 win each and 16 draws. So whoever wins this one will get bragging rights as the better man. So let's check it out. Nepo has the white pieces and he opens with pawn to e4. Now it starts off as a hyper accelerated dragon, will turn into a normal dragon, c5, knight f3, g6, and pawn to d4. Striking against the dragon, we have captures, and bishop to g7. So top replies are pawn to c4 and knight to c3. Do you want to play with the Marozzi structure, or do you want to play the standard stuff? We have knight to c6 and bishop to e3. We have knight to f6, putting pressure on the e4 pawn, bishop to c4, and castles kingside. We have bishop to b3 and pawn to d6. Pawn to f3, strengthening the e4 pawn. And now many moves are possible here. Sometimes knight captures on d4 is played to make room for bishop d7 and bishop to c6. Some people prefer to start with bishop to d7, but here we have queen to a5 by Fabi. This is actually the third most popular continuation. Also makes sense. You put pressure on the knight here, and queen to d2 is the move that, again, everyone usually plays. But here, Nepo plays not queen to d2, but rather queen to d3. And there are only a handful of games with this queen to d3 setup. Known moves are knight to d7 and bishop to d7. But here we have knight to e5. As you can see, it is the first time either of them has spent time in the game. Fabi spent some 20 minutes on this, and it is now, as of move 10, that we have a completely new game. So, okay, Nepo did put a queen on d3. Fabi says, alright, that's looking mighty suspicious. We have queen back to d2, and now just bishop to d7. Fabi, of course, wants to put the rook on c8 and play knight to c4 to put pressure on the queen and the bishop. That's a pretty standard dragon idea, and white always has to give up the light square bishop. So that's the plan, and Nepo still has to prove what queen to d3 back to d2 was all about. We have castles queenside, and now rook f to c8. So just preparing knight to c4, very standard stuff. King to b1 and knight to c4. Okay, we have captures. This is very good for Fabi as it makes room for the other rook to come to c8, and he will already have double the rooks on the c file. Pawn to g4, Nepo starts the very standard expansion on the king side, and bishop to e6. And now you have to be somewhat careful here, because you are always going to have to calculate rook captures on c3, as the a2 pawn will be hanging at the end of this line. So what Nepo should do here, there are a couple of ways that he could play this. One is to play a3. The other one is just to offer a queen trade. Let's say knight c to e2, you offer a queen trade, and if Fabi declines, now you play b3. And it's a very, very tricky to play this. For example, rook to c7. Now you capture the bishop, and after f captures, just h4. And this is a very, very solid setup. You don't even have to worry about stuff like this, because if, let's say, queen to a3, you can just play knight to d4. And if knight to d7, opening up this diagonal, for example, just c4, the queen also gains access. Not much black can do about this. All in all, this is completely winning for white. Also knight to e6 being the imminent threat. So after bishop to e6, knight back to b3 was played by Nepo, and Fabi now goes queen to a6. We have bishop to d4 and rook a to c8. Fabi doubles up on the c file, and Nepo, there are a couple of moves that he could play. For example, queen to e2, pinning the rook is a nice move. Also queen to g5 is a good idea, but he played pawn to g5 right away, and believe it or not, this move loses him the game. It's not easy to see why Nepo didn't even dream such a thing was possible. You can see that he still has an hour and 57 minutes on the clock, so he spent 3 minutes for the entire game so far, but the position is now lost. Feel free to pause the video and win the game for Fabiano Caruana while I give you a couple of seconds. So, for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on calculating this beauty out. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is knight captures on e4. This is what Nepo missed, and the problem is, well, f captures on e4 was played in the game, but I'm just going to show you briefly what happens if knight captures on e4. Well, what we've discussed, you constantly have to worry about the a2 pawn. Just rook captures on d4. And okay, if you capture, of course, just queen captures on a2 check, followed by queen to a1 checkmate. And if you move the queen, let's say queen to a3, e3, rook to a4. Again, with the threat of rook captures on a2. And if a3, you even give up the rook. You just don't care. For example, b captures, queen captures, you're threatening checkmate. If something like queen to c1, you can just move the queen, doesn't matter. Bishop captures on b3 is coming next. This is the point of no return. So after knight captures on e4, Nepo played f captures on e4. And you can see that this is, again, the first time Nepo spends time in the game. He spent some 16 minutes on this move, but it will do him little good. Bishop captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and now, of course, we just have to move the rook, and then we can enjoy gobbling up the a2 pawn. And of course, we move it by removing the defender of the a2 pawn. Rook captures on c3. Now you cannot capture. If you capture, it's just a very quick checkmate. Queen captures, king c1, and queen to a1 is checkmate. So after rook captures on c3, a3 by Nepo, but now just queen to c4, tripling up on the c file. Again, of course, capturing is not possible. Just queen to a2 now is guarded by the bishop, and after king c1 is the same checkmate. So after queen to c4, pawn to b3, and now queen back to c5, going after the a3 pawn. And just for fun, if you play king to a2, of course, you see what the problem is. You just move the bishop to g4, you put pressure on the rook, and it doesn't matter what white plays. Rook to c1, just e5, kick away the defender of the c2 pawn, you take on c2, and you win the queen and checkmate the king. There's absolutely nothing you can do here. So instead, after queen to c5, rook to c1 right away by Nepo, and now queen captures on a3. We have pawn to h4, as there is really nothing better. Rook 8 to c5, preparing rook to a5 and queen to a1 or a2 checkmate, depending on what Nepo plays. We have rook c to f1, creating some breathing room for the king here. Maybe you can escape to the king side, but of course it is not happening. We have bishop captures on b3. We've reached the position from the thumbnail, and it was in this position on move 25 that Nepomniachtchi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Queen to a2 followed by queen to a1 checkmate is the threat. And, well, we could capture, let's say, with the pawn. Let's say c captures on b3, rook captures on b3. And if knight captures, king captures, queen captures, you can block with the queen. If you don't block, if you move the king, then, well, of course, just not rook a5, but you can play something like rook to c4 to a4, and it will be unstoppable. And if you play, of course, queen to b2, then just queen to d3 with check, king a1, and the rook to a5. With check. You're gonna have to move the queen, but now, of course, you don't capture the queen, you just checkmate the king. Queen to c3 check, king b1, rook b5 check, and now you have to start giving up material. Whatever you play, it doesn't really matter, it's gonna be checkmate. King a2, queen to b2 checkmate. So that's what happens if you capture with the pawn, but even if you capture with the knight, it's not much better. Again, just rook captures on b3, c captures, queen captures, and that's pretty much it. If queen to b2, then queen to d3 with the same checkmating idea, and if king to a1, then again, like I said, rook to c4, rook to a4 check. White will have to give up the queen, and okay, white does have two rooks for the queen, but with such a terrible position of the white king, and with black being up 4 pawns, this is not even close. So yeah, beautiful 25 move game. Like I said, in modern times, that can only be considered a miniature. And what's interesting is that it was Nepo who surprised Fabi here. Fabi is the first one that started thinking with that with a 20-minute thing, bringing the knight to e5. But yeah, it's just how Nepo plays. Out of a completely normal position where queen to d2 is the move, he plays queen to d3. And you really cannot explain this. Why would you give Fabi this beautiful tempo on the queen, knight e5? It's a move your uncle would play, but also a move that is so obviously strong and complicated that even a World Chess Championship challenger, a two-time World Chess Championship challenger, would play it. So yeah, try it. Maybe yeah, you have better luck with it. But Fabi takes down Nepo, and some of the games are still being played. I'm probably going to show at least one more game from this round, and then we are going to discuss the standings. But yeah, thank you. Like I said, I was already in my bed, almost asleep. It's almost 1 a.m. here, as I'm in Europe. This played in the United States, and the games start fairly late. They start at 8 p.m. American time. But yeah, I saw this game. I thought, yeah, okay, we have to show this now. It is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Stadelman, GuernseyChessFestival.org.gg, mychessassets.com, Jacob Sorvala, and Odis the Great Dane, who loves chess, for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions, such as this one, and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.